Hey, so um, welcome to Birth as We Know It. This is a podcast that is dedicated to recognizing the many different ways that birth unfolds. You usually hear birth stories from individuals who have experienced birth themselves, whether they're birth workers, providers, partners, or birthing people themselves. But today I wanted to do something a little bit different because having a podcast means you have to adjust and change to things. And you know, birth stories are long and I love them, but I struggle to have the time right now to be able to edit them right now in full capacity to where they deserve to be edited because they're really important stories. So, with all of that said, I'm also trying to do something new. And what that means is I'm going to have a new segment called BAWKI Snippets. And BAWKI is the abbreviation for Birth as We Know It, and snippets means short. So it's a shorter version of a shorter episode, I should say, of Birth as We Know It. And what that looks like is these episodes will be just me, and I will be talking about experiences that I'm experiencing as a birth doula, a postpartum doula, as I'm training for childbirth education, and just what life is like, all things related to birth work. And so here we are. And the fun thing about this is if you're listening on audio, just know there's also a video option. This is my first episode of this segment. And so there will be mistakes, but we will learn along the way on how to polish this up. But let's just go for it, right? Let's get into it. So, if you are only listening to this, just imagine me sitting at a table on a rooftop with a blue sky behind me and a couple of beautiful flower bushes. Okay. This may not be the setting all the time. I can guarantee it won't be the setting all the time, but I think it's a good first start. And in these episodes, I'm going to be super real and we're going to see what we learn in the process. Okay. So today's episode is going to be about what I've learned this week as a birth assistant, actually. So I am a birth assistant, birth doula, as well as postpartum doula actively right now. And so I had the opportunity to attend some births this week, and I've learned so much every time. Number one thing I've learned is that birth doesn't wait for anybody. And as a birth assistant, I was called to two births this week and had the privilege of actually making it on time while rushing and knowing that that might not be the case. And the thing that really stuck out to me in both of these scenarios, sorry, there's background noise. A thing that stuck out to me in both of these scenarios is how do I show up for people when I'm showing up? What energy am I bringing into the space that they're birthing in? It is their birth cave. What am I going to walk into, and what energy am I bringing, and how am I going to best be supportive to the midwife or client in the space? And I think of this because it's so important to pay attention to what you bring into a birth space. And I realized in the first and second birth that I went to this week that I may be walking into a room when a baby's head is out of this person's body, or when a baby has already been born, or when a birthing person is in transition, or when everything is still kind of early and calm. Because as a birth assistant, I get called later in the birth when birth is expected to happen within the next couple of hours. This week, it just happened to be within the next hour. So I did make it to these births, but it was barely. But with that said, what energy do I bring into that space? And so the way that I coach myself is I actually talk to myself about that as I'm driving. And I can have all this anxiety with me as I'm going into these spaces while knowing that the way I show up is so incredibly important to the family that I'm supporting and to the provider that I'm supporting. Because it's not just the client, it's also the provider. And so when I come in, I need to make sure that I'm standing on my 2 feet, right? And so I need to be calm, cool, and collected. I need to know what skills I have, where I fall short, and how I fit into the space with knowing that knowledge. And so as I walked into these spaces, I went in expecting babies to either be born or head being out or pushing and actively pushing a baby out. So I knew that if that was the case, I would be going into a space that's somewhat chaotic, high energy, fast motions, fast movements, fast needs that need to be met. And I calmed myself in the space. I calmed myself before walking into the space, went inside, and kindly let the providers know that I was there. I gave a eye contact and a nod to the people that looked at me as I walked in the door, but I did not go in and necessarily dive into the birthing person's zone and say, "Hi, I'm the birth assistant. I'm here to greet you and help you." Um, Most of the time, they are already told that a birth assistant is going to be showing up to their birth. And the importance in that is I can show up and not necessarily have to introduce myself until the time is right. I do still introduce myself. It is still very important to introduce yourself. And I do this after baby's born. And that's important. And so I come into the space, have a calm, cool, collected energy as much as possible. And then I present myself to the midwife and I take over charting and do all the things that the midwife needs my help with. Luckily, I do have experience as being a former student midwife as well. So when midwife is listening to heart tones, I am also aware of what the heart tones are based off of my education and experience. And with that, I confirm, was that 140s? Yes. Was that 130s? Yes. Was that a deceleration to 90 and back up? Yes. Those kinds of things are the things that you pay attention to, which is why prior experience is also great to bring into the space with you as you support families. And the biggest thing that I make sure I do is know what I'm capable of, know what energy I'm bringing into the space, but also know what experience and studies and training I'm bringing into the space and utilizing that in case of emergencies. For example, one of these births, I had to call 911. And was it an emergency situation? No. Was it an urgent situation? Yes. And I just had to remember that I am the person transferring this message over. So the tone of my voice matters of who I'm talking to and how quickly I need them to come and what I need them to come for, who they are coming for, and what the overall situation is. And so that felt good for me to be able to understand that I knew what I was doing, know that I needed specific information before making the call, such as patient's age and name, and also being able to transfer that message in a calm manner that says this is not an emergency, but it is urgent. So let's bring that urgency along with you and make it snappy. Um, yeah, so that's something that I really paid attention to and took my attention as I was supporting these clients. Um, and a birth that I came from today, I went to a birth today. um, and I'm tired. I woke up really early, and I'm sure I am less tired than the birthing parent that pushed out a baby. So I learned today that the team you have around you that brings the energy you want to the birth is also incredibly important. And the reason why it's important is because it determines whether or not you feel safe. It determines whether or not you feel heard, validated, seen. And it also determines how vulnerable you are able to feel when birthing your baby. So it was lovely to be able to support this birth today, knowing that everybody in the space was related to birth in some way. The person who was giving birth was a birth worker themselves and was able to communicate with us in ways that were different and to understand things, and for their partner to also understand things. And then for all of us birth workers that were currently present as her supportive team, clinical team, were also aware of each other's we were familiar with each other, and so we were also aware of each other's experiences and capabilities of how we could best support this client. And so coming into a space like that just kind of brings this extra energy and flow that is different when you're supporting someone who isn't experienced in birth. it's just different. It's not bad that it's different, but it's a good different when you get to have the opportunity to do something like that and to be able to communicate openly and have, that humor that is understood by everyone in the space, and just being able to relate to everyone in a different capacity is amazing. With that said, that is what I've learned today. And that is what I learned this week as a birth assistant. Those are a couple of random things that came to my attention. And I do want to say that most of these episodes will be unscripted. So this is just my thought process out loud. It's just what's coming to mind. And so there may be things that I forget. There may be things that I enjoy or talk about or repeat, but it's all real. And that's what I want to share with everybody in the life of a birth worker. And so here I am holding a microphone in the corner of a rooftop with loud traffic below me. Let's be real. Okay. All right, friends, it was super nice talking to you, and just stay tuned. I will continue to post things as often as possible in a way that makes sense with my schedule as a birth worker and a mother of 3 and a partner and, human. So let's be real together. All right. Thanks for learning with me this week.